You are listening to the Buried Treasures podcast. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe down below. Like, comment, and share your favorite episode with your friends and family members. And please help us establish and build a masjid in Lombard, Illinois. You can go to supportmu.org to make a contribution. Jazakumullahu khairan. Welcome to the Buried Treasures podcast, brought to you by Masjid Uthman, where I interview a new guest every week to discover their journey. I'm Hamza Warsi. Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Jazakumullah khairan, everyone, for joining us. Today we have the one, the only, probably the freshest sheikh on the block, mashallah, Shaykh Ubaydullah Evans. How are you doing?
Alhamdulillah, I'm well, man. Thank you for that generous introduction, and thank you for your beautiful accommodation and warm hosting, man. It's been beautiful so far.
MashaAllah, mashallah. So, Shaykh, why are you dressed so fresh all the time?
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulihil kareem wa ba'd. This is a part of a long journey and a process. My grandmother was a boutique owner.
MashaAllah.
She was known for being a very fashionable woman. I was raised with my grandmother. That's actually one of the great fortunes of my upbringing in my childhood, is that I got to experience the treasure of extended family.
MashaAllah.
My grandmother lived with me, and she could sit me on her knee and talk to me about the old days. And I always felt like I had that generational link, to the past and past Black communities and, historic Black Chicago, et cetera. But she was known for being a very fashionable woman. And I think, of course, I'm a male and my grandmother was a woman, so I couldn't emulate her in terms of actually dressing like her. But I think taking pride in my appearance was something I wanted to emulate. That was something that I kind of modeled, after her. And then I became Muslim. And I was listening to a talk by Imam Zayd Shakir, Hafidhahullah, may Allah preserve him.
Ameen.
And he said something that was really incidental to his talk. It wasn't like the talk was about this. He just said that some of our youth are so shallow. Their personalities lack depth to such an extent that their self-esteem is an extension of the labels on their clothes. And I thought, he's talking about me. And I went through like this massive purge, and I went into my closet. I had tons of clothes, and I gave away everything. I called people from my neighborhood, people I knew that were still into clothes, and I gave them everything I had. And I had one shalwar kameez that a brother from Trinidad made me, actually. It was a handmade garment. And I had one jubba, and I had those two garments, and I only wore those for almost 2 years. And then, of course, I added more to my wardrobe, but at that time, you probably wouldn't ever see me without wearing shalwar kameez or a jalabiyya or a thobe and an imama and a turban, and always, of course, covering my head. And then I went to the ALIM program, and I met Dr. Sherman Jackson. Hafidhahullah, may Allah preserve him.
Ameen.
And to be honest, I was very apprehensive about his persona. He was like this. If I can be frank, if I can keep it real, the Islam that I knew from the south side of Chicago was really like an urban, its flavor was very urban. Its flavor was very working class.
Yeah.
And Dr. Sherman Jackson was one of the first Muslims I encountered that was purportedly a scholar, right? This is how he was introduced. I didn't know him or his work at all at this time. But his flavor was very middle class, pants, shirt, and he was a college professor. I was very apprehensive about that. I actually told my wife, Allah yarhamuha, that I was married to at that time, who has since passed on. May God have mercy. She's buried in Egypt, actually. I told her, there's no way anybody who knows anything about Islam would dress like this. And I think he had on like a short sleeve shirt, a 2-button polo shirt, and some some trousers or something like that, some loafers or something like that. And I said, let's leave, actually. When I first saw him, I was so disgusted by just the Westernness of his appearance. I said to her, we should leave. And she said, don't be closed-minded. I mean, women save the lives of men regularly.
Yeah, mashallah.
She said, don't be so close-minded. You haven't even heard what the man has to say yet. And he was teaching the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, and he teaches the seerah very well.
Mashallah.
He teaches the seerah very well. And more than anything else, I felt that I was listening to someone that loved the Prophet ﷺ and knew a great deal about the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. And I started to become more comfortable with him. And maybe the third or fourth day of instruction, I was looking at him and I was thinking, you know, if it were not for this kind of drastic change that has clearly occurred in my appearance, I was wearing a thobe at that time, I probably would dress something like him.
Yeah.
You know,
He's pretty fresh.
You know, it's kind of like, I mean, like kind of with the natural progression of years and maturity, I probably would dress something like that. Yeah. And that just, you know, started a process of kind of reevaluating, you know, how I wanted to present myself. And contrary to the belief of some people, I still wear jubbas, I still wear jalabiyas, I still wear jalabas, I still wear shalwar kameez on occasion. And I think that Muslims tasting the cultural richness of Islam in all of its beautiful nuance and diversity is very important. So I actually don't think that American Muslims should wear American clothes. I think that's, I mean, it's silly. That would be truncating. That would be limiting this rich cultural expression of Islam that we've seen in so many cultures throughout the world. But I do want to feel comfortable myself, you know, making a contribution to that cultural richness. That Muslims also dress like this, and that people that teach Islam, you know, also dress like this as well. You know, and in all of it, inna Allah jameel wa yuhibbul jamal. Allah is beautiful and He loves beauty. And I think that you're very beautifully dressed as well.
Jazakallah khair.
Alhamdulillah.
I try, man. I went to my barber right before this.
No, he did a good job.
Mashallah,
He took care of you. He took care of you.
Shout out to Abid, man.
Allah Akbar. Shout out to Ivan. I'm gonna have to come see him myself.
Yeah, mashallah. He's right by MCC.
Always go to the city to get a haircut.
Always, man. The burbs, they don't know nothing.
They don't do it right. They don't do it right. Come on, man.
Yeah, mashallah.
Get serious.
So Shaykh, you know, how was your early life, and you know, how was taking your shahada, you know, what was that journey and story like? I know you've probably told us a dozen times, or maybe hundreds of times.
It's funny because my wife, Hafidhahullah, may Allah preserve her, man, she always jokes that every time you tell the story, you tell it differently. And I say, you know, and every version is true.
SubhanAllah.
You know, I think when somebody converts to Islam, at least my experience of conversion to Islam, there's so many different things that are calling you to the path. You know, so a part of it was my association with a Nigerian classmate who, you know, was a Muslim, and also he introduced me to his father. Part of it was reading the encyclopedia and reading some entries about Islam that were just dry and expository. They weren't intended to be persuasive or, no, just this is what Islam is. And there was something about divine unity, something about Tawheed that really spoke to me, that really inspired me. I think it was kind of an expression of what I actually believed in, even though I was afraid to admit it to myself. Like, I don't think I ever really digested the belief in a triune God. I don't think I ever really, you know, it was something that I heard people say God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. And, you know, I think, you know, I mean, I'm no theologian, right? So I didn't problematize, you know, that. But I don't think there was ever really tuma'nina, yani. I don't think there was ever really like contentment in my heart with that kind of idea or belief. And I think that even then, my prayers were always to Allah.
SubhanAllah.
Allahu Akbar. You know, so when I saw it written for the first time, there's nothing worthy of worship except God, or there's no God but God, that immediately fascinated me. And I explored also hip hop. believe it or not, man. You know, there was a lot of Islamic and proto-Islamic. By proto-Islamic, I mean things that aqidatan, in terms of i'tiqadan, are not our religion, right? The Nation of Islam and the 5% Nation of Gods and Earths and Wu-Tang and those kinds of influences. But just hearing the words Allah, hearing the words Islam referenced in artistically powerful ways and culturally relevant ways definitely opened my mind. Like, what is this, right? There was also the influence of Malcolm X, who, mashallah, was, Allah yarhamuhu, wa rafa Allahu shatna, may Allah have mercy on him and raise his station, who, his story, I saw the movie Malcolm X when I was 10.
Oh, no way.
And my mother allowed me to watch it, even though I believe it was a rated R feature. But my mother allowed me to watch it. And after the movie, I just said to her, whatever he is, that's what I am.
MashaAllah.
At 10.
MashaAllah.
Right? Whatever he is, that's what I am. Right? I was so impressed with Denzel Washington's depiction, his portrayal of Malcolm X. And I also read the book when I was in high school, maybe a sophomore. And that convinced me too, like I am Muslim, I am Muslim, I am Muslim. So all of those things kind of came together in the living room of my Nigerian friend with his father giving me shahada.
MashaAllah.
MashaAllah. And funny story is that when he gave me shahada, he gave me a stack of papers that had some introductory level kind of Islamic teachings. And he gave me a topi, right, a crocheted knitted cap. And he gave me a siwak. He gave me a miswak. The topi I knew, okay, this is like some kind of religious headdress. The papers, I knew I had to read those. The siwak, I couldn't figure out what it was. I was thinking, it's a stick. Because he didn't tell me anything. He didn't say, like, use this to clean your teeth. He just said, here. And I was like, And I would just carry it places with me. And I would tell people, I'm a Muslim. And they would say, no, you're not. I would just pull the siwak out like, how else did I get this? They're like, what is it for? I'm like, I don't know. They give it to new converts, So always funny when I remember that.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. That's beautiful. And how was the overall feeling taking your shahada? Was it something that was uplifting in the sense where you understood that this is who I always was, or was it any? Different? There was so many different influences, and likewise emotions and feelings competing for space within me when I took my shahada. I think I was scared. I didn't want to be. I wasn't. I think if you look at like religious converts, I think many of them you will find were always like marching to the tune of their own drummer. They might have been people that we considered like weird, or people that were socially awkward, or, because like in my experience, people that the status quo was working for them, like the whole game of high school is working for them, or professional life is working for them, or why am I seeking answers and seeking redefinition and seeking redemption? Things are working for me. My case was a little different. I mean, I was a popular kid, man. I wasn't like a socially awkward kid or like a social outcast, I was a popular kid. I think I enjoyed pretty good esteem, among my classmates. I was an athlete, I played basketball. So a part of me was concerned, like, as I turned toward my conscience and I turned toward my heart with this belief in Islam, what will happen to my status? Will I become something weird? Will I become something strange? Will I become like, so part of it was fear. Part of it was also excitement. I felt like I had entered this world that a lot of people like me didn't know existed. And that was exciting. I remember going to the masjid for the first time when I was still in high school and shaking someone's hand that was wearing an itr, wearing a heavy oud. And I remember smelling my hand thinking, I've never smelled a scent like that.
You know what I'm saying? You know,
It wasn't Jannat al-Firdaus, right?
No, I don't think it was Firdaus. Yeah, it was some kind of oud, right? It's kind of heavy, woodsy kind of oud. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I'm entering, and that was just the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've entered a new world that has new sounds, like hearing the Quran recited for the first time. It has new scenes, seeing people in these flowing robes and these men with these beards and people from different countries. It has new smells, like the itar that was on my hand. Like, and I felt like, here this world is, right here on the south side of Chicago, and the only person like me who knows about it is me. No, none of my friends, none of my classmates. And that felt really special. I felt in that like Allah chose me, Allah guided me. You know, other people walk up and down the street every day, they still see this building. They would never even be prompted to enter, let alone to actually go in as a believer and to pray with other believers. So a part of me really felt a great deal of gratitude, a great deal of excitement about what was going to happen next. So there was fear, there was gratitude, there was excitement. There was also a lot of questions, a lot of confusion, a lot of apprehension. I think it's hard for some people to identify with the experience of a convert. It's like, I come from a social reality that I'm quite accustomed to. Yeah, I know what to do. You know, you go to your grandmother's house, you understand, you do this, you do that. You go into this social setting, you do this, you do that. I'm coming to the masjid, I don't know anything. People are telling me, you know, in words I don't even know, make 2 rak'ah. What up? Okay, I mean, you know what I'm saying? You know, do you have wudu? Yeah, you know what I mean. You know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying. You know, have you made dhuhr? Sure. You know. It's like, so. There's just, you know, it was all of those things. All of those things. I can still feel them today.
MashaAllah. How old were you at this time?
17, 16 or 17.
So you're still in high school, MashaAllah. You take your shahada. You know, what happens when you come home? What does your grandmother, mother, siblings, what do they say?
You know, man, you know what's really odd about the history of my family is that my grandmother's father was a Qadiani.
Allahu Akbar.
Right, my grandmother's father was an Ahmadi.
Wow.
And my grandmother had grown up a member of the Ahmadiyya community. And a lot of people don't realize that some of the earliest missionaries, you know, Muslims, I mean, I think I'm using the term missionary very loosely.
Yeah.
I don't know that Muslims have ever really engaged like strategic missionary activity at the level that Christians have. But people who came to America with the expressed purpose of performing da'wah and inviting people to Islam, the Ahmadiyya, right? And we know their heretical beliefs, their heretical views, was one of the early communities that would actually proselytize in Black America. And but even stranger than that, my grandmother's father, his surname was Muhammad. And he migrated to Chicago from the U.S. Virgin Islands. So I remember asking my grandmother about your father's nationality.
Yeah.
And she says, I don't really know for sure because children didn't ask their parents things like that back then.
Yeah.
But most likely he was Desi. So I might be an 8th Desi myself. I mean, you know, which is just a weird thing to think about. Yeah. So when I came home and I told my grandmother that I had embraced Islam, she started giving me all of this history of things that she knew about Islam from her time growing up in the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. And she even gave me a photograph that was taken in 1956 of her, all of her siblings. My grandmother had 6 siblings, sitting at the masjid on 49th and Wentworth. Was, you know, there was a masjid that they used to pray at. I saw, not only did I see my grandmother's mother, but my grandmother's mother's mother that had also become an Ahmadi. Wow. Right, in this photo. And she told me that it is, now my grandmother went on to marry a man that had no connection to Islam whatsoever. And by the time I was born, this was just a kind of pastiche, a kind of aspect of her cultural past. It wasn't, she didn't kind of actively continue pursuing any kind of practice of Islam, but it was something that she prided herself in having experienced, right? Like this was a part of her experience. So she just looked at me and said, wow, our family had a connection to Islam and it's coming back with you. It's coming, it's returning through you. And that really gave me confidence to continue pursuing the practice of this great religion. So my grandmother was actually very happy. My sister, who was only 14 at the time, actually embraced Islam. Right? She was younger than me. My mother took Shahada. My grandmother, took her Shahada. And I was in the basement one afternoon as I think a high school senior, and they all came down and prayed with me. They all came down. We all came down and we made salah. And after, oddly enough, at the conclusion of the prayer, my grandmother looked and said, now I'm expecting, like, this was a momentous thing. We just got it finished praying. I think it was like, I don't know what prayer it was, right? But we prayed. My grandmother looked at my mother, looked at my sister, looked at me and said, that's it, guys. No more pork. no more pork in our house. You know what I'm saying? But oddly enough, and this is, just being like real with you, man, that was a lot of pressure on me. I'm 17. My mother just prayed with me. Yeah. My grandmother just prayed with me. My sister just prayed behind me. I don't even know anything about Islam. I don't know the first thing about dawah. And it was very difficult for me. In fact, if I'm being honest, I didn't do a good job of nourishing their interest in Islam. Like that, sometimes I have to like pinch myself to like that really happened. That my mom and my grandmother and my sister all made salah behind me, right? When I was still in high school. And I just didn't, at that time, I mean, there was no like Tetlif and these kind of organizations that, focus on kind of a smooth transition into Islam. And, my grandmother was a woman, Allah yarhamuha, for whom I had tremendous respect. My mother as well. And I didn't know how to strike a chord between being disapproving. I didn't want to seem disapproving of them. I mean, these are, my matriarchal, role models, right? I don't want to seem disapproving of them, but I want to like continue teaching them and telling them things as I'm learning things. And make a long story short, I wasn't able to nurture that interest in Islam. And, my mother still has a relationship to Islam. And it's growing though. It's growing, mashallah. But, sometimes I think, subhanAllah, if only, now we know that saying low is from the shaitan. So I will, in fact, qadarullah ma sha fa'ala. I request that all of the listeners make dua that I can succeed at giving my mother da'wah. And, welcoming her back to Islam, because she took her shahada and she prayed with me. Sometimes we interact with each other as if that didn't happen, but I remember it did happen. I'm not making this up. It did happen.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. May Allah make it easy.
I mean,
MashaAllah. So after high school, MashaAllah, what sparked that initial interest to go study, and where did you go study?
Man, my mother is an educated woman. First member of our family to go to college. And, she didn't do, she took a tough major. My mother's a chemist, by trade. And our family always had a very conspicuous connection to education. In fact, And the reason I mention this is that I don't think these stories get told often in Black communities. You know, my father wasn't around when I was growing up. My father suffered with drug addiction, and my mother was a single parent, and I lived with my grandmother. So we never got to experience kind of the material fruits of my mother being an educated woman because, you know, she was raising us alone. Had my father been there, and my mother worked as she did, our childhood and upbringing, my sister and I, might have been completely different in terms of just the wealth profile that we would have enjoyed. So we were still kind of a lower middle class, you know, family, and even an impoverished family at certain times in our, you know, experience. But education was always highly emphasized in my household. In fact, even more than being stylish and being an athlete, I always defined myself. Now, I don't know if it was true or not, but I always defined myself by my ability in school and my proficiency with words. I could, you know, from the time that I was very young, I prided myself on being able to speak with great facility. Right?
You're really smooth, mashallah.
No, it was something that I really esteemed about myself, and something that I actively tried to cultivate, you know, through writing and through speaking and presenting when the opportunity presented itself. So when I became Muslim, naturally, I would have an interest in Arabic. Naturally, you know, just because that's me. I'm into language. I'm into the spoken word. I'm into expression. And as I kind of, you know, I was studying with a brother named Abdullah Clark. Shout out to Abdullah Clark, man. Abdullah Clark was a great teacher. You know, I see him now. And again, you know, it's funny how the past can become, you know, something that we don't even reference. Abdullah Clark has actually been at the masjid as I'm giving khutbah. And sometimes I don't think I remember to acknowledge that he was my first teacher. You know, he's not a fluent Arabic speaker from what I know or anything like that, but he read Arabic. And he was my first teacher. And I would travel 60 minutes just to sit with him on a Saturday to learn how to read the Arabic language. And then shortly after that, there was a brother named Kashif, an Indian brother, a murid of Shaykh Hussein Abdul Sattar. He would invite me and another brother named Nu'aman Kareem. We would spend the night at his house on Saturday. He would order pizza. We would go to Divan. We would study the Yassarna al-Quran. We would study that qa'idah, right? And then we would go to the masjid in the morning and listen to Shaykh Hussein. I had the benefit of just some really good people that just stimulated that interest in Islam. So after high school, I was actually dead set. Like, I don't want to study anything except Islam. I was so intrigued with Islamic study. You know, I was so intrigued with Islamic study. And I met people that had just returned from Damascus, right? They had just returned from Damascus, and they were glowing, man. I mean, you could, within the community, you could just see what exposure to knowledge had done to them. I mean, they sounded different, right? Sometimes I joke with them now. You guys were over enunciating your Arabic words, just showing off the fact that you knew Arabic, right? We would just say Assalamu alaikum. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So they sounded different, they dressed different. They would reference books when speaking to each other. And I just wanted in. I'm like, yo, man, how can I get some of that, right? And at the time I was, studying at Columbia, and my mother, wanted me to continue with school because, she had worked very hard to instill the value of a college education, in her children. And the idea that I would go and, do some kind of Islamic study in the Middle East was just unfamiliar to her and probably a little concerning, right? Given kind of what the Middle East represents, in the popular imagination, political turmoil, bombs and explosions and strife and stuff like that. So she asked me, she said, okay, if this is what you want to do with your life, fine. But is there any place you can do it locally so that you don't have to travel overseas? And I said, I don't know. I'll ask around.
Yeah.
And the first place I heard about was IIE. Mashallah. Alhamdulillah. So that's kind of how it started for me.
And how long were you at IE for?
I was at IE for like 2 years and some change.
Oh, mashallah.
I was a boarding student, and I actually was doing the Dars Nidami, the Alimiya course. And I just want to say, I know that the founder of that fine institution was embroiled in some controversy, and we pray that Allah Ta'ala give healing and vindication to anybody that was harmed by anyone. And we pray that Allah Ta'ala inspires anyone who did wrong to tawbah. But I do want to say that, that man was very good to me. It's very good to me. And I hope no one takes offense or exception to me talking about my experience with him. Just a selfless, beautiful, generous man, deeply committed to facilitating the study of the Quran and Islam for people who wanted to study. And so I came to him and I said, I don't have any money. I have no money. I can't give you anything. But if you allow me to take up residence here and to read here and to study here, I will try my hardest every day. And he looked at me, he laughed, and he said, class is on Monday. It was almost like all of the dramatic stuff. I've heard all of that before, but if you're serious about the study of Islam, you can come here, you can live here. And I went to IIE for 2 years and change. They never collected a single dollar from me. I ate breakfast every morning with all of the other students, lunch on the dasturkhan with all of the other students, dinner on the dasturkhan with all of the other students. I never gave them a single dollar. I never gave them anything. And thinking of that now, as alhamdulillah, my economic fortune has shifted somewhat. It's just I need to send something over there. Yeah, I need to send something over there. Yeah, I think I really need to do that. But 2 years and change, not a single dollar.
You were there for a little over 2 years, mashallah. What did you accomplish during your studies there?
Well, I learned to read the Quran.
Mashallah.
Alhamdulillah. And it's strange because a lot of people don't realize this. And I used to be shy to talk about this until very recently. I never did a khatam of the Quran, right? And I think everyone who learns to read the Quran should first do a khatam of the Quran. Just read the Quran. Let it penetrate your heart. Sit with it. I learned to read and I memorized Juz Amma. I did 30th right away. I went from 30th to first and started going through memorizing. And, I memorized, a considerable, amount. Alhamdulillah. Memorization, I was pretty good at memorization. I didn't finish, subhanAllah. But I memorized a considerable amount. And, the thing about that is that because I didn't finish, and this is why I tell people, if you start a hifz, try to finish, right? Block out the distraction. Everything else is going to be there. Al-Quran miftahun li kulli ilm. The Quran is the key to every knowledge. Arabic will be there. It will be there. Fiqh, it will be there. Mustalahat al-Hadith, it will be there. Sirah will be there. It's not going anywhere. But the Quran, if you finish the memorization of the Quran, after the completion of your hifz, you can work to build a relationship with the Quran. right? You can do muraja'a daily. You can do, review daily. You can recite a juz. Some people recite 2 juz. Some people recite a hizb. You can build this relationship with the Quran, which is really the goal.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't complete your hifz, one of the dangers, and I want to caution the talaba, listening, is that your relationship with the Quran can become just chasing. You're just chasing what you've memorized, right? You're just chasing that. And you never really learn to enjoy the Quran, right? Every time you open the Mus'haf, either you feel guilt because your memorization is not as pakka as it once was, or you open the Mus'haf and you're just trying to reclaim, right, some memorization. That's, I'm not going to say that that's the worst thing that can happen to a person. It's good that you're opening the Mus'haf, but the Mus'haf, the Quran, is not something just to be chased for memorization. It's something to be transformed by. It's something to be read and to be imbued with, a sense of God's presence. Fi samawati wal ard, in the heavens and the earth. And if you see the Quran as just a chance to reclaim this memorization, a chance to review this, a chance to, sometimes you never get to that sweetness, right? So I did some hifz. I didn't finish, regrettably. I learned some Arabic, and I learned some Hanafi fiqh, alhamdulillah. And more than anything else, I got a chance to see the lives of people who lived the Quran. Maulana Aziz Saab, Maulana Tahir, all of the Salim family. MashaAllah. My teacher was Sa'bai. Sa'bai was my teacher. So anyone who notices my peculiar tendency of enunciating my ayn,
we know where that's coming from.
We know where that's coming from. You know what I'm saying, right? So Sa'bai was my teacher. And just seeing the lives of people who live the Quran, sitting up after Isha on Friday nights, listening to the stories of Maulana Aziz Saab. I had the honor of helping Maulana Aziz prepare for his constitution test.
Oh, mashallah.
So after Isha, I would go into his little compartment where he slept, and we would review, we would study English and read stories together and talk about the constitution test. But in between all of that, he would tell me stories about India and stories about the great scholars that he had learned from, and being from Lucknow and Nadwatul Ulama and, Sheikh Nadawi, and, so it was just the exposure to that culture was really, really defining, for me. Alhamdulillah.
And was there any, did you ever leave home before, and was there any difficulty staying away from home throughout the week in a dormitory?
No, I had never, well, I participated in some summer camps that I was away from home for 2 months or something like that. At that time, I don't know what they do at IIE now. At that time, I think there was a certain naivety, so that even though I wouldn't advise it, and I don't think that they were negligent in this, I just think we were just naive. But, sometimes I would be rooming with kids that were 12, 13, 14 years old, and I was probably 20, which is something I probably wouldn't advise now. You just want some parity in the ages. I'm not saying that we have to pretend like there's this pervasive cloud of sexual misconduct that's everywhere, but it's just it's just good to have people rooming with people with whom they share, similar experiences. They're, of similar ages, et cetera. So the most difficult part, I think, for me was just being in a room with little kids, man. Which is I'm pretty sure they probably don't do that anymore.
No,
yeah, they don't do that anymore, which is a good development. But at that time, again, I think we were all a little bit naive about how that could be dangerous. So I think my roommates were like Ahmed Khurshid, mashallah, who was at that time the young Egyptian reciting whiz of IIE, and I had another young man whose name I can't recall, and it was us three, I think, in the dorm, and of course, a part of me felt like, I'm 20 years old. I'm rooming with a 13-year-old. What the hell is going on with my life? You know what I'm saying? What the hell is going on with my life? It's like, what? But of course, there was some difficulty in that. But for the most part, I think I just enjoyed the camaraderie, enjoyed the brotherhood, enjoyed the fact that we were united in this purposeful activity.
MashaAllah.
Alhamdulillah. That, getting up every day and memorizing the Quran and studying, the deen, it felt enriching in a way that is nearly indescribable.
MashaAllah. Was it difficult learning to recite the Quran day and night?
It was. I think the thing that I underestimated about tahfidh al-Quran is the stamina. I think unfortunately, it's really unfortunate that, some people look at hifz and, they've spoken, I think, hastily, and I think they've spoken ignorantly, if I can use just plain language, about rote memorization, and they talk about this as though, it's a waste of time, or it's kind of this intellectually draining activity. No, quite the reverse. Actually, it's actually a great display of mental stamina, and a great display of tenacity to keep coming back to the Quran, day after day for hours, and committing it to memory. I think what people forget is that hifdh al-Quran was always a part of a nizam, right? And of course, young people, I have 3 children, and critical analysis is probably not the strength of an 11-year-old or a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old, but memorization can be a strength of an 11-year-old or a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old. So the thing about hifdh is that we're memorizing now, which is important. Anyone that says that memorization is not an important aspect of study, I would argue what they actually know about study, right? To be able to consult the sources of whatever discipline you have studied on the recall of your memory is always an indication that one is approaching mastery of that subject. Right, a person rummaging through papers to figure out the precedent, right, is not quite as familiar with those cases as the person who knows the material, right? It indicates what I've spent time with this. I don't have to. The defendant's name was no. I know, right? Memorization has always been an important aspect of legal study. Especially, talk to any lawyer and that's the thing about Muslims, man, that's really disappointing. We will talk about, the brain drain of rote memorization, and then we'll celebrate if one of our children gets into the University of Chicago Law School or Harvard Law or Yale Law, and they will go there and memorize things. And they will take tests based on what they've memorized. And we'll be very proud of them.
Yeah. The irony.
The irony, man. The irony. Yeah. So I think I didn't realize, man, this takes a lot of stamina, man. I couldn't believe that, class periods were 4 hours. Yeah. We started 8 and we'd go into 12, sometimes until dhuhr, just reading with short breaks, maybe at 10 and 10:15 or something like that. But just the stamina. I think that hifdh builds people in tremendous ways. Neil Postman, who was a writer in communications, he talks very beautifully about the gifts of a print culture. Right, that people that grow up reading as kind of the primary means of taking in information, one of the things they learn through reading is patience. Reading teaches you patience, right? If you're going to read a book, of any kind, you have to sit there and read. It takes hours to get what in a movie you could get in 90 minutes.
Yeah.
This might take days. This might take weeks
Yeah.
to get this story, right? But people, one of the things that he pointed out is that people that build that capacity to sit patiently and to read, it prepares them for all kinds of amazing work, right? Because they can actually sit and focus, right? We have a culture now, it's hard for us to focus more than 15 minutes on anything. You know, you're talking about, a television program. And one of the things that we don't realize about television programs is that as we watch, the angles are switching so quickly. You never really focus on any one thing for more than maybe 15 seconds. That's how quickly the camera angles shift, right? And each time the angle shifts, there's a new burst of stimulation that kind of locks you in. How can a person like that develop a cure for cancer when you might need to sit with, your material for hours, poring over it again and again before you actually develop that cure? Now, someone that does hifd, I think they're primed for that kind of engagement.
So 2005, you go to the ALIM program, right, for a 4-week summer intensive.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So can you walk me through kind of why you went there and then what you took away? You did also already mention a good chunk of it, or a good portion of Dr. Sherman Jackson.
It was weird, man. I left the madrasa. The only reason I left the madrasa was that I wanted to get married. Which the biological clock was not only ringing but falling off the table. I was like, I can't. There came a time in my life that I couldn't focus on anything else. It's like I'd be memorizing or studying Arabic. I'm just like, I need to get married. But after getting married, I saw that, if you get married, you have to support your wife. Nobody told me that part. So I had to start working. And I was self-employed. I worked as a vendor and stuff like that, which was a cool kind of job. But I still longed for the environment of study. And I ran into Zain Bengali. I don't know if you know the Bengali family.
I don't.
Ibrahim Bengali, Abid Bengali, Aisha Bengali. Ibrahim just got married, mashallah. And I actually flew to California to be the officiant, for his wedding. I'm deeply indebted to the Bengali family. I don't know how, but I mentioned to someone that I'm working now and I'm married, alhamdulillah, but I still long for study. I still, it's like, this is like, okay, I left the madrasa because I knew I needed to get married. Mm-hmm. Now that I'm married, it's like, man, I wish I could still study, in some way. And so Zain Bengali, he suggested to either Rami Nashashibi or someone else, he should go to the ALIM program. Now at the time, my experience of Islamic study was the madrasa.
Yeah.
That's what I knew, was the madrasa. And they said the program was called the ALIM program. Mm-hmm. Would you like to go? And I think I explained to Zain, I said, well, the program probably has a cost associated with it. Mm-hmm. And I work for myself. So if I go, I'm going to miss money. And he said, we'll take care of the cost and we'll make sure you don't miss any money. Any of the money that you would have missed, don't worry about it. We'll take care of that. These are the kinds of people that subhanAllah. So I said, yeah, I'll go. I had no idea. I just thought it would, honestly, I expected it to be something like Deen Intensive or Light Study in the UK or something like, not what I encountered. What I encountered was much more, it seemed much more consistent with the experience of students at American colleges and universities. The only difference was that they were being taught in a faith-affirming context. Right. But the teachers definitely had that kind of academic pedigree. And that came through in their style of instruction and some of the issues they were willing to tackle. And I think at first, the whole thing made me very comfortable. Even the fact, just to give you a sense of where I was coming from. And by the way, I want to mention this, Hamza. Whenever I'm talking about this, I don't want anyone to build into my story this kind of linear idea of, I've transcended that, or that's behind me. So it's very important as I'm talking about clothing, I don't want people to think that I see this as like I've graduated to this and I left the thobe, or I graduated to this and I left the topi. That would be silly, and it would be disingenuous of me to speak of it in that way. Similarly, I don't want people to think like I've graduated to this nuanced understanding of Islam and I've left my strictness. And no, but I was at that time very strict. My exposure was to, a very, and even using the word strict has a negative connotation. I will say a very careful, a very cautious Hanafi, Islam was what is, in a sense, how I had been reared.
Yeah.
I converted to Islam, and very shortly after that, I was in a madrasa.
Yeah.
So even just arriving to ALIM and just seeing the co-ed space was very, I had assumed that there would be much more strict division, that my wife would go on this side of the thing and I would go on this side of the thing. And just to see students, carrying on, fraternizing and socializing in ways that, let's face it, were probably similar to what they do on campus every day. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The idea that the Muslim space becomes like this performative space, I don't know that benefits anybody, right? If we're going to talk about modesty, let us talk about modesty in a way that can be implemented wherever we go, at work, at school, at the shopping mall, wherever, that we understand that a certain distance between men and women, of course, practice with an art and with a grace, but this is something desirable, admirable, prophetic. There's a certain distance that we maintain, but the idea that people have all of these relationships that they maintain at work and at school, then come to the masjid and say, oh my God, those women, I can see their feet. I don't know, there's something about that is, there's something about that's, it's silly to me. It's like, what? It's like, who is this performance for? Right. So in a sense, I don't want to knock those brothers and sisters, right? They're just doing what they normally do. Right. But it was something unfamiliar to me. And the whole thing really was like very hard for me to swallow. Like, brothers and sisters kind of just hanging out. And then, the classes again where we were sitting, on desk, we were sitting at desk and at tables as opposed to sitting on the floor, which is what I was accustomed to. The teachers taught in a Socratic way, asking a lot of questions instead of going through the metan, line by line, with the teacher stopping periodically to explain the metan and then continuing. And maybe, you ask, questions, but it wasn't the teacher actively asking you questions.
Yeah. What
do you think about this? What do you think about that? And at first I was uncomfortable with it, but after a while, it really inspired me. I was like, man, this is really, I enjoy this. I think after I became comfortable that these guys in these pants and shirts and open collared shirts and ties and jackets, they love Allah and His Messenger, right? Just like just like my teachers, in their turbans and their beards and their jubbas and their shalwar qamises, and the way that they are talking about Islamic study is fortifying young Muslims, building them and protecting them against the forces in the dominant culture that can really, really harm their understanding of Islam and maybe even harm their iman. So by the end of the program, I was like hooked. I was like, I love this. At first, I was very uncomfortable. But by the end of the program, I was like, okay, I really, really like this. And Dr. Sherman Jackson, Dr. Munir Farid, Dr. Ali Suleiman Ali, all of them in different ways had a very profound effect on me. But Dr. Sherman Jackson really, really had a profound effect on me. Alhamdulillah.
Jazakallah khair for sharing that. So after you come back from the ALIM program, what inspired you, or actually you kind of mentioned the inspiration of wanting to travel overseas to study. Why did you choose Yemen and Tarim?
You know what, man? This is crazy. I went to the ISNA program one year. This year, it was held in D.C. It was held in D.C.
Okay,
It might have been
mashallah.
2005, actually.
Yeah.
Maybe that was 05. Yeah, I'm sure. In fact, it was 05.
Yeah.
And Habib Ali Jifri,
MashaAllah.
mashallah,
MashaAllah.
who, again, I understand now has become embroiled in some political controversies and things of that sort. He gave presentations after Fajr with Shaykh Abdul Karim Yahya as his translator.
MashaAllah.
And, I don't think I've even mentioned this to Shaykh Abdul Karim, but there was something about the synergy between the Shaykh and the translator that, because, I should say the interpreter. Interpreting is an art, man. I've been pulled in as kind of a de facto interpreter, not de facto, that's the word, as just a, ad hoc interpreter. Get over here, just, somebody needs somebody to help them with Arabic. And if an interpreter is good, they can even begin to convey some of the emotion, right? An interpreter is more than just, like, first thing with interpreting, you never speak in the third. You never say he said, you say I.
Yeah.
Right? You become the person.
Yeah.
And Shaykh Abdul Karim Yahya, of course, because I only spoke English, it was almost like he was becoming Habib Ali Jifri. Like he said, in the stories, he would, he was very, very good at interpreting. And I remember saying, wherever they are, that's where I want to go. I remember seeing them and thinking, and seeing, he was Yemeni, of, prophetic ancestry, this very distinctly wrapped kind of turban. He was a big man, Hafidhullah. And he had an asa, he had a staff and sandals, and of course the Tarim shawl over the shoulder. Everyone knows their aesthetic, just like everyone knows our aesthetic at Al-Azhar, the Ka'kula and the Tarbush. And it was, I still find it, very beautiful. I still find it very inspiring. At that time of my life, it was like, I want that. It was incredibly magnetic, is the way that I would perhaps describe it. And I learned that they were in Tarim. And so I told people, I guess I'm going to Tarim. And that's where I went.
MashaAllah. So in Tarim, you studied at Ma'had al-Badr?
I did. Shaykh Ibrahim Siafa.
MashaAllah.
Alhamdulillah. That's a man. Whew. Some people have, mashallah, the blessing of a very intense presence.
MashaAllah.
And, it's interesting. I didn't even know that much about the lives of the companions or the personalities of the companions. Ridwan alayhim ajma'een. But sitting in the presence of Shaykh Ibrahim Siafa, I just felt like I was sitting in the presence of Umar ibn Khattab. Very, very, a very bold man, a very imperious man, mashallah. And he was the mudir of Ma'had al-Badr. And I got a chance to study Arabic there. Alhamdulillah.
MashaAllah. So how was it, switching from, conservative madrasa life in Elgin, then shifting gears, to the ALIM program, and then now traveling overseas?
This is the thing that doesn't, it's interesting, man. Hamza, man, this stuff doesn't have like a very clear linear line. Yeah. There's different lights going off at different times, because somebody would say that as scholars, you can't find two people more different than Dr. Sherman Jackson and Habib Ali Jifri.
MashaAllah.
Right? Hafidhahum Allah.
MashaAllah.
But for me, oddly enough, it's like meeting Dr. Jackson and listening to him, something in me was awakened, something in me was inspired. And meeting Habib Ali and seeing him present at that ISNA program, something in me was similarly inspired and awakened. And in my mind, those two things were not that, they weren't as distinct as someone else might find them to be.
Yeah,
someone else might say, this is an American academic and this is, a Yemeni Sufi.
Yeah.
Right? What's the connection? think I could, get down into clean English, the connection, but it was connected to me.
Mashallah.
For me, they were connected
Yeah.
in some very profound way. So the shifts that might have apparently been there from the madrasa to ALIM to Tarim, somehow for me, they were a seamless kind of symmetrical whole. For me, in my person, those things were all balanced. But I totally could see how like a biographer would be just like completely confused.
Yeah.
Like, madrasa, alim, tarim? Explain. But that's just how it happened. And for me, there was just this consistent line of scholarship and inspiration that, carried all of those unique experiences.
MashaAllah. And what were the differences in terms of studying locally in America versus now traveling overseas to Tarim?
Oh man, I mean, number one, and it's probably the most obvious thing, is language immersion.
Yeah.
Being in Tarim, I was forced to speak, Arabic. Not as much as some people might think. I mean, there's lots of students from the UK, lots of students from America, and of course we could still speak English. My roommate actually was a Muslim that had come from Westminster in the UK, but I believe his mother was of Chinese descent and his father was of Pakistani descent. His name was Abdul Sabur. And to this day, he is still the most diligent Arabic student I've ever seen in my life. He was my roommate in Tarim. That man was, he was so inspiring as a student, man. He restricted himself to speaking Arabic. And he was an engineer, I think, by trade. And it showed. He restricted himself to speaking Arabic. And I think I tried to keep pace with him, as best I could. But he was in the fast lane, and I was being passed. He was in the fast lane, I was being passed. But language immersion was a big one. And then I think الرحلة في طلب العلم, traveling in pursuit of knowledge, opens your mind, in ways. So as your mind is being opened by formal study, your mind is also being opened by experience. I'm again in this place of newness, right? I'm again in this place of, experiences that are new, scenes that are new, smells that are new, words that are new. And I think in some ways, those things feed each other, right? So as I'm opening myself intellectually, I'm also opening myself experientially, right? Whereas I think being in Elgin, I was opening myself intellectually and experientially, right? Being at the madrasa. But, the comfortable familiarity of a McDonald's, which is now everywhere, bad example. But the comfortable familiarity of kind of, my social life was just a train ride away, or just a car trip up the street actually, or, just very, very close. Whereas in Yemen, that familiarity was not going to be able to save me. Yeah. It wasn't like, okay, this is weird. Okay, I'm just gonna go, because sometimes at IE I would go home on the weekends, and it was like at that time actually a much needed dose of like some familiarity. It's like, okay, I've been eating dal chawal and eating with my hands on the dastarkhan, but then to be able to go home and sit at my grandmother's table and eat some fried fish was kind of like, okay, I'm still here, I'm still me. In Yemen, that familiarity just wasn't at arm's length, so as to speak, and it forced you to just open yourself to new experiences. So that was, and I really appreciated that.
MashaAllah. So what was the day in the life of a student
at Ma'ad al-Badr?
Yeah.
We had class. Of course, we prayed Fajr at the Ma'had, and those who wanted to could walk to Dar al-Mustafa, which was, because I lived in the Mahja, I lived in the dormitory. Dar al-Mustafa was about a 10-minute walk. wasn't too far. So if you really had him And Dar al-Mustafa had an amazing just energy that flowed through it. I think it was a combination of the great teachers that taught there and the ambitious students that learned, there. If you were lazy, you probably would get up and pray Fajr, there at the Ma'had, right, at the school. You would go back, you would start preparing your classes, start preparing your lessons after Fajr. We very seldomly, if ever, slept after Fajr, right? Really, in any of the places that I learned,
Yeah.
Tarim was almost like an extension of the madrasa with a little more independence. But it was, we were a close-knit student body. We ate together, every meal. We lived in a dormitory, and we all studied, at the Ma'had. And the course offering was not like you could take these classes or those classes. It was a nidam. First year you take this, second year you take this, third year. I think it was only really a 2-year program, actually. 1 year, 2 year, you should be able to matriculate into Dar al-Mustafa, after the second year. So it was actually very similar to the madrasa, with the same challenges too. When you're living, in fact, I think that learning to live with your brothers, and for sisters learning to live with your sisters, it's a part of studying. Arguments, of course, ensue, and those arguments have to be resolved, and people do fight. And in Tarim, how real can we be on this program?
100% real.
In Tarim, it was my first exposure to the Deobandi Brailevi fitna. I never, in fact, which is really a testament to IIE. Because, of course, in IIE, almost all of the student body and all of the teachers were from the subcontinent.
Yeah.
And I lived there for 2 years, and I had never heard anything about this fitna. That's just how, in terms of their character, how above that they were. And even now, I don't even know where my teachers, I don't even know where they would come down on the issue. I don't, only when I got to Tarim with students from the UK, some of them were Brailevis and some of them were Deobandis. And they would fight like Crips and Bloods. They would fight like Crips and Bloods, man. And so there was the atmosphere around the dorm was a little bit tense. I remember in particular a brother, which a lot of the Brailevis, they would say, if you're Deobandi, why would you come to Tarim? Why would you come to Tarim? which is very odd. But one of them was looking at a video of a Maulid, in India, and just laughing at, I guess, what he thought was the silly reactions of people at the Maulid. And one brother took exception to this. These people love the Prophet ﷺ, and you ridicule them. And they started fist fighting.
No way.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes way.
Allah.
Yeah, yes way. SubhanAllah.
It was that intense. Wow.
It was that intense, man. I find that some of the communities in the UK very contentious and very doctrinaire in ways that American communities, maybe just Philadelphia in America. Just in America only Philadelphia is like that. But in the UK, I think it's much more common that Muslims have that, Salafi, Sufi, Shi'i, Sunni. It's America, I think, has been spared in some quarters of that kind of very intense sectarian kind of fitna.
So how long were you in Tarim for? 2 years?
No, I was only in Tarim for 6 months.
6 months, okay.
Yeah, I was in Tarim for 6 months. Actually, subhanAllah, important part of the story, my wife learned that she was pregnant.
Subhanallah.
We were scheduled to go to Tarim together, and we were going to stay 2 years right away. We learned that she was pregnant the day after I booked the flights. SubhanAllah. Qadarullah ma sha fa'ala. And of course, she was clearly apprehensive about experiencing her first pregnancy in a developing nation that had a developing healthcare system, and someone told her that it might not be advisable, not for the first pregnancy. So she didn't want. She was like, "I'm going to stay back," and I was like, "I just feel like I have to do this at this time in my life." What this is, when I think about it, I'm becoming emotional because, of course, she has since passed. Allah yarhamuha. But I said to her, like, I will never abandon you. I know the optics don't look good. You know what I'm saying? It's like, and I mean, to just be frank, one of the issues that we've struggled with as a Black American Muslim community is, responsible fatherhood, man. There has been some noticeable struggles there. And I don't think that those struggles are coming from Islam. I think those struggles predate Islam. Yeah. And sometimes Islam is not used effectively, and maybe Islam, in addition to some other tools, used effectively to really root this idea of being a prophetic father and understanding the importance of that sunnah of what the Prophet represented to Fatima anha, is as important as wearing your pants above your ankles. It's as important as eating with your right index finger, your middle finger, and your thumb. But unfortunately, we have people that will emphasize those sunnah. And the sunnah of what he represented to Fatima or Kulthum or Ruqayya, that's not even sunnah. You know what I'm saying? Unfortunately. So I told her, look, I know this has some very bad, the optics look bad, like we just married a little under, 3 months or 4 months ago. No, about a year. We had just married maybe a little no, 3 or 4 months. I was right the first time. We just married maybe 3 or 4 months ago. You're pregnant and I'm going to Yemen. The look is not good. You know what I'm saying? The look is not good. I said, but listen to me. I will never abandon you. MashaAllah. Never. Whatever fears you have that I'm not committed or that I'm disloyal or that I'm somehow like running when things get tough, wallahi, I don't have an ounce of that in my soul. You are my wife and I'm going to be here for you every day, every step of the way. But I just feel like I have to do this now. If I don't do this now, maybe, talabul ilm, studying will never happen for me. And I said, with your permission, I would like to take you to Denver because my late wife, Allah yarhamuha, was from Denver, Colorado, to leave you at your mom and dad's. And I would like to still, travel for just 6 months, right? So I'll be returning for the entire, like as you're beginning the last trimester, I'll be returning. I'll return in time, inshallah. But just to get this journey of knowledge started, she never flinched. SubhanAllah. She never flinched. You talk about a tremendous woman. MashaAllah. She never flinched. MashaAllah. She said, I believe in you. I support you. Let's do it. I called her mom and I gave her the same spiel. And I realized that the optics are not good. The optics are not good. Yeah. She's pregnant. I'm dropping her off and going overseas. But, I'm going to call every day and I'll still see to it that money is sent, every month. And, I made good on my work.
MashaAllah. That's beautiful. So after 6 months, you returned back to the States.
Returned back to the States. And I got to witness the birth of my daughter, Asiya. MashaAllah. And she was, inquiring about Yemen. And I had to be honest with her. I said, well, because, my late wife, Octavia Rashid, she was a supportive partner. But she wasn't, at that time, she ended up becoming actually quite studious. But at that time, she wasn't a very studious person. Like she didn't have any ambition of her own to study. She clearly was willing to support me.
MashaAllah.
But in Yemen, in Tarim, and I know of many sisters that thrived in Tarim, studying themselves and supporting their husbands. In fact, Sheikh Aisha Prime studied in Tarim, right? But it was a little austere for what I felt was my wife's sensibility. I felt like, I don't know. Returning from Tarim, I kind of felt like, ooh, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you're not a student yourself, this might not be enjoyable for you.
Yeah.
Right? And so I said, I don't think, given what I know of who you are and what will be most comfortable and accommodating for you, I don't think returning to Tarim is great for us as a family, right? Me and that now, my young baby Asia, who's 15 now. SubhanAllah.
MashaAllah.
It just is, SubhanAllah. Me, you, and Asia. I don't think Tarim would probably work the best for us. Although I really loved Tarim. If I was, a bachelor, I'm pretty sure I would have returned to Tarim. And so I sought out Dr. Jackson again. And I said, I want to study Islam. And at that time, I actually said that I want to teach like he does. I actually wanted to be an academician. I wanted to be an academic. And he said, go to Egypt. He said, go to Cairo. He said, go to Cairo. He said that I was in Cairo, speaking himself, right? He said, I was in Cairo in 1982. SubhanAllah. And he said that, as I was, directing the Center for Arabic Study Abroad, I was reading with the ulama from Al-Azhar in Maliki Fiqh. And reading with them really prepared me for my PhD. He said that, at that time you could go to Masjid Al-Azhar and sit with ulama of the highest caliber, studying Dardir and the Mudawwana of Sahnoon and studying Dusuqi and studying, Sharh al-Saghir, and you could these people were accessible. Yeah. And he told me, I don't want this to sound like kufran al-ni'mah, like, ingratitude for a blessing. Because I ended up enrolling at Azhar, right? Anticlimactic, spoiler alert. But he actually said, don't, be wary of institutions in the Muslim world. They are, they're kind of in a time warp, man. They're kind of behind. And what you would get in the program in 4 years at Azhar, or 5 years, you probably could get through darasat al-khususiyya, private study in probably 2 years, a year and a half, right? Just focused. He said, get the muqarrar, get the curriculum from Azhar, but do it privately. And just be prepared to pay people or whatever you need to do. And then he said, in addition to that, Cairo, still the developing world, but, there is a shopping mall. There is an amusement park. There are restaurants. There are cultural associations. You have, a very vibrant community of American expats doing different things. Some people there, Fulbrights, some people studying at Azhar, some people, just living abroad and working at the consulate. It's different. Your wife might find it more kind of comfortable. It's kind of like she will still, it's nothing like any American major city, but it's still a city. It's stuff to do. It's a movie theater. If you want to go to the movies, there's a movie theater there and stuff like that. And so I said, this might work better for me. Just given what I know about my family, this I think is what I'm looking for. So I traveled to Egypt, expecting to study privately. I didn't expect to enroll in Azhar. I never wanted to do that. I never wanted to do that. I think, to my surprise, what I found was that Egypt had apparently changed a lot between 1982 and 2007. When I got there, I would go to the masjid. And the other thing too, I think I overestimated my ability. I would go to Masjid Al-Azhar. When I first got to Egypt, I literally would get dressed in the morning, go to Masjid Al-Azhar, and just walk around trying to see where are the mashayikh, where, who can I read with, who can I study with. And you did have classes in the ruwaq. You had classes in the rooms adjacent to the courtyard of the masjid. But it just wasn't, I could, about a month in, I knew building my own, Dr. Jackson is just an incredible person. I'm sure of that. But I saw that building my own kind of study experience just out of the bits and pieces and different things that I heard about in Egypt, I just didn't think that was gonna work. I just knew no, I don't think that. I'm trying. I'm going to the masjid. I used to go to the masjid like when you see day laborers, they bring their tools and they sit in front of Home Depot waiting for. That's how I would show it with my book. I would just show it with a mushaf and just looking who can teach me something. It was just kind of a blank mission, just who can teach me? I would just go sit in this circle for 45 minutes, have everything being said was above my head. A curriculum. The benefit of a curriculum is that it builds the student in knowledge. So you begin with a basis, then you add to that basis, and then you add to that basis. There's a system here. Whereas I just thought I could just insert myself in halaqat and just, I'm here. It's no, it's not. You don't know anything of what's been covered before this. Everyone here has studied this, and this. You haven't. It wasn't working. And one day I was walking down the street, completely dejected, feeling like a failure. I was close to Madinat al-Buhus, which is where all of the exchange students at Azhar lived. And I was walking with my head down. And I wasn't crying, right? It would make for a better story if I was crying. But I wasn't crying. But I was distraught. I was like, dang, man, this whole Azhar Egypt thing is just it's not taking off like I wanted to take off. And I heard a voice from a car saying, Ubaydullah. That sound good. Yeah, I heard a voice from a car who said, Ubaydullah. I'm like, huh? And I look, and it was Hamza Abdul Malik,
MashaAllah,
who's the Imam of the Midtown Mosque in Memphis, Tennessee. And I had met Hamza in Tarim. Right? Hamza has probably one of the most extensive pedigrees of any American student, scholar, teacher of Islam that I know. Hifz in Morocco, Talabul Ilm in Syria, then Tarim. I heard his voice. I'm like, Hamza? He jumps out of the taxi. Yeah. He comes, he greets me, we're talking. And, we catch up for a bit. And I tell him just the hard time that I'm having. I came here to study Islam, and I'm trying to do it through private scholarships and, private lessons and classes. And, my Arabic is not the best, but I'm trying, And he was like, no, I'm enrolling at Azhar. He said, you should do that. And I said, no, I've been told to stay out of the institutions in the Muslim world, that, they're kind of in a time warp and they're kind of backwards and things take a long time. He said, well, look at it this way. Things may take longer, but you will get a muqarrar. You will get a curriculum. You will get regular exposure to teachers that have training. And in the additional time that it takes, you will become more adept at seeking those private lessons. You'll be in the circles. So yes, maybe if we just look at Azhar's curriculum, maybe with private scholars, private lessons, you could get in 2 years what you could get in 5 years at Azhar. But in those 5 years, you will now be able to study more things with more people. You'll be able to enter some of those halaqat and benefit from them. And if you want to do a master's or PhD in the US, you can take the Azhar degree and enroll at an American college or university. And I was like, so where do I start? He said, well, meet me here tomorrow. We'll go through the process. And Sheikh Hamza Abdul Malik, took me by the hand and showed me how to enroll at Azhar. And that's actually how I enrolled at Azhar. So it must be a tremendous slap in his face when they say, Ubaydullah Evans, the first African-American graduate. You know, he's like, man, I was there too. You know, which I never said that. I don't know how that, I don't know who put that. Somebody put that in my bio. And people I don't even think he or I are the first American graduates of Al-Azhar. Somebody put that in my bio, and it was up in cyberspace, and then people just took off. It kind of took off. It became a false claim to fame. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, Sheikh Hamza Abdul Malik, you know, he showed me how to enroll, and I enrolled at Azhar, man. And that's I totally didn't plan on doing it. Yeah. But you know, after I did it, I did feel best. Okay, now I'm getting somewhere. Mashallah. And then I think the next step was just preparing for the entrance exam. Mashallah. Yeah, preparing for the entrance exam, which was like, for me, it was grueling. For him, it was probably a breeze.
So what was the preparation for the entrance exam?
Oh, man. You know, I mean, we had everything. Man, we had balagha, we had Arabi, we had hadith, we had tafsir, we had hifd, we had memorization. I mean, it was a grueling preparation. Yeah. I remember spending 3 months every day, 7 days a week. There was there's a famous man. You know, some people achieve fame in the oddest way. There's a man named Antara. And Antara was, oh man, I love Egypt, man. Mashallah. I love Egypt. I love Egyptian hustle. Mashallah. Antara was a man who, what he did for a living was help people prepare for the entrance exam. No. And and what was weird about Antara was that he was a religious man. I mean, you know, if we were reading together and the adhan was called, he would go to the masjid and he would pray. But the way that he helped you prepare wasn't like in the devotional mode. It wasn't, which is I think good for the students to hear this. It wasn't, he was a very pragmatic person. So as, you know, he would say, look, you have, if I can get you, because, okay, let me explain to people what's happening here, right? Yeah. In Egypt, there's only a handful of, or at Azhar rather, there's a handful of institutions globally that you can graduate from high school with the Shahada Mu'adala, with like an equivalent degree, so that you can just enroll at the University of Azhar. Most of the other students have to begin in the Ma'had Azhari. You have to begin in the Azhar Preparatory Institute. Yeah. You would take a placement exam, and you would either the best you could do was get into the last year of the Ma'had, which would mean you had just 1 year in the Ma'had, in the you know, the Preparatory Institute, and then you could go into the university, right? If you scored lower, then you can get in the second to last year. There was 3 years at the Ma'had. But then there were 3 years under that, right? So you had Awal I'dadi, which is like first year elementary. Yeah. That's if you're really down there, like you really like just learning Arabic and right. Then you had, you know, Thani I'dadi, right? Second year, Thalith I'dadi, third elementary school. And then you had 3 years Thanawi, 3 years secondary, right? The goal was to score high enough to get into the third year secondary. Mashallah. And then you just got to do 1 year, and then you can go 4-year program into the university. So Antara, he didn't prepare you in like, you know, you light like some bukhur, and you're sitting with him with your legs folded and saying like hadith. Yeah. No, he's just giving you like basically like the cliff notes. This is what's coming on the test. You got to know this, and you got to know this. You know, make sure, at that time they could ask you, I think anything in the last 3 juz of the Quran in terms of memorization. Yeah. Right. Okay. They're gonna definitely ask a question from Mulk, and then they're gonna, you know, so it was, you know, it was kind of like a cheat sheet. It wasn't not cheating, but it wasn't like, the point I'm making to students is that preparation for the entrance exam, it was not like romantic talabul ilm. It wasn't like that. It was like, there's a test coming. This, you got to know this. You would make sure you know that. So I took my entrance exam. Alhamdulillah, I got last year.
MashaAllah.
I got last year.
MashaAllah.
He had like all of the Western students as clients.
Yeah.
He would just go from one person's house to the next person, and he probably made a comfortable living doing it.
MashaAllah.
Because I mean, of course, we're coming with money, we're coming with dollars, and you know, right? So I got into my last year of the ma'had. Then you get to the ma'had, and oh man, you know, it was quite a scene. It was quite a scene. Again, not what you would expect.
Mm-hmm.
You know, these are teachers that are underpaid because they're like high school teachers.
Mm-hmm.
Students that are coming from everywhere. Even though they gave us an entrance exam, there is no real standard in terms of what everyone knows. Mm-hmm. You know, I remember I would see, and then too, you learn also in that space that like knowledge that people can like listen and take exams is not the same as like a very comfortable proficiency with Arabic. Mm-hmm. But all the classes are being taught in Arabic.
Yeah.
So we would see like Central Asian students from, you know, Tajikistan or, you know, Uzbekistan. And, you know, you would speak to them in Arabic, and they would just look at you like, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? You know, like, I'm like, you don't understand what I'm saying? Nope. And they're sitting right next to me, and I'm like, okay, how's this? Yeah. Obviously, they must have, you know, known someone or known something that they could pass the entrance exam. Yeah. And that was kind of the weird thing about my experience at the Ma'had, especially, is that, I mean, mashallah, we're here at Masjid Uthman, and we want to inspire students, right? But I also want to tell them the truth.
Keep it real.
That experience at the Ma'had Azhari, if I were only seeking romance, to walk in the footsteps of Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, and to walk in the footsteps of, you know, the great grand ulama of Azhar, that experience of the Ma'had might have broken me. You know, people sitting out before classes smoking cigarettes in the courtyard of the joint. Yeah. People really preparing for careers in religious service that they didn't think of as being inspiring. That they thought of as being on a government payroll in some country somewhere. Yeah. Knowing how to give a khutbah or read a khutbah and perform a janazah and you know, lead prayers and recite an azah, recite at a wake or something like that. And that was really it. It wasn't like, you know, for some of the students, it wasn't like, you know, this is talab wal ilm. It was like, you know, just trying to get a job, you know, trying to get married, and you know, it was it lacked that kind of romantic, you know, for some of them, you know. And then you had other students, you know. Actually, I found that a lot of the Indonesian students, a lot of the African students were still very proud and still, you know, their talab was like, I'm carrying something for my family or my village, or, you know, like, you know, I think a lot of the Western students, we felt drawn to them because they still had this kind of understanding of the sharaf of knowledge, the nobility of knowledge. And then you have some students like, I'm just trying to get a job, man. Yeah. You know, saying it's ain't no big deal. You know, you take the test, you pass, you come out, you get a job, you go to the masjid, you give a little khutbah, you get to marry a girl. That's life. You know what I'm saying? You know, take a pull off a cigarette. So for the teacher, trying to teach all of that, different levels of proficiency, different aims, different goals, people inspired at different levels. Yeah. I think it was just overload for the teacher now. Now that I'm a teacher myself, and, you know, they would go in and, you know, they would teach, but it wasn't the most inspiring teaching. that I've been exposed to,
Subhanallah.
right? And a lot of it, you just had to tough it out, man.
Yeah.
You had to, and this is my message for students, you had to connect with those students that respected the pursuit of knowledge in the way that you did.
MashaAllah.
And you had to build with them kind of communities of students that, really honor talabul ilm and are serious about it and want to get together after class and, let's talk about Fath al-Bari. Let's look at our textbooks. Let's go over them, man. Because something like that at a place like Azhar is not just like automatically on offer. It's not like this is the culture that everybody, is participating in.
Yeah.
Not everybody.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So that was probably the most difficult part about the Ma'had, in particular, right? And to some extent, that continued at the university level in terms of the diversity of the students. I mean, predictably, right? They went from here to here. But the teachers were much more serious at the university level, right? The teachers, and much more knowledgeable too. The teachers were much more serious at the university level.
What are some of the difficulties that you faced when studying at the Jamia?
Class size. It's huge, man. It's not, I think when we think talabul ilm, we think me and a master of a discipline sitting knee to knee, discussing this, glorious traditional text. That's what we think.
Yeah.
You don't really think about an auditorium with 300 people in it, sweltering hot.
SubhanAllah.
You know what I mean? With a teacher speaking into this huge space with a weak microphone. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And you're trying to lean in like, right? But, and his fusha being interspersed with, colloquial Egyptian, Arabic. That was different, man. That was different. And also too, I mean, the building itself, and I'm very attentive to the way that space impacts an activity. The building itself is very poorly maintained. It's very hard. I think it's difficult to get a sense like this is an ilm sharif. This is a noble knowledge. You got doors coming off of hinges and windows that are busted and bathrooms that, Lord have mercy, you would enter them and say, I think I'll hold it. You know what I'm saying? Oh my God. It becomes, it's a damper on your spirit, man. We're creatures of spirit. So here I am trying to follow a path of knowledge that, the Prophet ﷺ said that this knowledge is carried from generation to generation on the best, in the hearts of the best people. And here I am wanting to, make my contribution alongside that transgenerational community of the best of the Ummah of Muhammad ﷺ, and to be in environs that just didn't reflect that back to me. I had to dig deep into myself to find it. And I relied very heavily on my classmates. People like Sheikh Yasser Fahmy, people like Sheikh Usama Salahiyya, Sheikh Jamal Diwan, Arsalan Haq, Hamza Abdul Malik, and some British students as well. Habiba Kande was a student at that time. And, there's a brother from Glasgow, Scotland, whose name eludes me. Shuaib? I'm forgetting. I'm blanking. But you had to really rely on that kind of close-knit community and just the sincerity of your teachers to kind of get you through. Because I think for the institution itself, they just didn't appear to have much regard for the illustrious history that Azhar represented, man. Unfortunately, man. They didn't, for us, this is like, Harvard is the Azhar of the West. We don't say that Azhar is the Harvard of the East. Harvard is the Azhar of the West. And one thing that I think the West is good at, and maybe it's an unfair comparison because, they have lots of material resources at their disposal. I mean, Harvard has an endowment in the billions, right? They do a very good job of impressing upon the students how privileged they are to be at this august and great institution. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be reflected. I've lectured at Harvard. I've lectured at Yale, alhamdulillah. I've lectured at Princeton. I've lectured at the University of Chicago. Right? I've lectured at the University of Illinois. These are places that will reflect back to you this, privilege, this esteem that you feel for the knowledge. It's reflected back to you. You can see it. Mm-hmm. Right? You go to Harvard, you can see it. Yeah. You feel like, I am, a part of a minority cadre of people that get to study something at the highest level. At Azhar, you won't see that. Not from the institution itself. That you won't see that like reflected back to you. Mm-hmm. What you'll see is like, wow, this knowledge that we love and that the teachers love, because this is not from the teachers, that the teachers love and that many of the students that we love, we've left our home countries, right? We've left our homelands to come here and learn, and you're treating it like, you don't even need to fix a door, man. Dirt piled up in corners, I mean, it's sad to see a people so willing to squander their inheritance. Mm-hmm. It's like, it's unbelievable. Yeah. It's really sad. Mm-hmm. It's like, and then the odd thing is that you'll see them exerting themselves to be world leaders in areas that they're so far behind. The idea that this place will ever become, a leading institution for physics, maybe. But you got a lot of catching up to do. You know what I'm saying? Maybe. But those colleges, the colleges where medicine was taught at Azhar, because medicine is taught at Azhar and physics, and were better maintained, and there was a more serious atmosphere cultivated for the pursuit of knowledge and serious study. And I'm like, but the study of Islam, where you already enjoy esteem, and this institution is considered the preeminent institution of learning in the Sunni world, it's like, what are you thinking? Mm-hmm. What are you thinking? But that was really a challenge, man. Like living in that every day. Right? That's a challenge.
Sheikh, was there ever a time you wanted to stop your studies?
Yeah, man. When I was in my second year in the university, my wife died, man. Allah yarhamuha.
Ameen.
And my world literally spun off its axis. We had lived together in Egypt for 3 years, and we had spent more time as a family living together in Egypt than we had any other place. Right? I mean, I started studying shortly after, we married. So Egypt was really the home of our family. It wasn't her individual home, and it wasn't my individual home. But in terms of I, and my youngest daughter, Asiya, that was our home. All of our memories, our favorite restaurants, the parks that we went to, the masajid that we prayed at, that all happened in Egypt, man. We didn't have any memories in Chicago. We never lived in Chicago. We have any memories in Denver. We never lived in Denver. So it was weird how Egypt was a home away from home, because that was like the setting of my family. So it's like that was my, if someone were to ask me then, what is kind of the natural, I guess, habitat, if you will, of your family? I say Cairo, Egypt. That's where my family lives, in Cairo, Egypt. So everything was just familiar to me. When she passed, only then did Egypt really feel like a foreign country.
Allah.
You see, because ironically, Egypt was really home it was the home of my family. Cairo was the home of my family, which is it's strange to say that now, but Cairo was the home of my family. That's my family's home, was Cairo. So it was just, it was a certain familiarity I had in terms of just being there. And when she died, it just all became so foreign. And I had to work through some very serious feelings of guilt. She came to Egypt supporting me. And she died of what's called an ectopic pregnancy or tubal pregnancy. She was pregnant, and I guess the baby was, the fetus was germinating in the fallopian tube instead of the uterine something. Anatomy and physiology is not my strong suit. And of course, in America, this probably would have been detected very early. The pregnancy would have been terminated, and but due to the level of healthcare we were receiving in Egypt, that probably exists in Egypt too at higher levels, just went undetected. And, she had this ectopic pregnancy and she died, and she's buried there in Egypt. Of course, I told myself, that's it, man. I on so many levels, I couldn't return there. Like, how can I return there without my family? I only know Egypt with my family. I can't be a single father there. I mean, can't be a single father and study. Maybe it was my pursuit of this crazy, unreasonable dream of studying that cost her life. I had to wrestle with all of that. It was my mother, man. My mother, man. That incredibly strong woman had to grab me by my collar. Asia will stay with me. You will go back to Cairo and you will finish your studies.
Mashallah.
You will go back and you will finish what you started. You will not quit, because I didn't raise you to be a quitter. You will not give up until the task is complete. And we're not going to talk about this. You're going back. You're going back, and you're going to finish what you started. And when she put it to me like that, that's mom. You know what I mean? That's mom. I gotta go back. I gotta finish this. I gotta go back and finish this. And it was, if I can kind of trip the listeners out a little bit, it was eerie, man. I went back and I lived in the house that we lived in together by myself. I lived in the same apartment. And can you imagine the emotions? I was, when I think about how focused I was, and I'm not saying this to be sensational. Sometimes I would be studying for my exams through tears. I'd be sitting, just me in this apartment that we used to share as a family, reading by myself. And I could remember, I could still hear her laughter and things, my daughter being there, and I would be studying by myself. And it was somehow the intensity of that emotion was accelerating the study. It's crazy. It was accelerating the study. That's just how rough I was. I'm not gonna stop. But when a friend of mine, John Halliwell, I had to return to Egypt, because when I would leave, the owner of the apartment, who you may know him. His name is Kabir Kareem, actually. He's from Peterborough. He's a British fellow. We're actually still good friends. He was in Chicago just a little bit ago. He would say, I got to rent the apartment while you're away. You know what I'm saying? So when I came back, I got a chance to live with a white American convert to Islam named John Halliwell, who is one of the most interesting people I've ever met. Let's put it that way. But interesting in a good way. Interesting in a good way. I believe he's single, so I don't want to say interesting in a bad way. So women think, stay away from this guy. No, interesting in a good way. If you're thinking about marriage, he'd be a great person.
Mashallah. Mashallah. Subhanallah. And how was it going into that final year of studies, knowing that, inshallah, you'll be graduating and returning back to the States kind of?
Man, what's weird? you study and you learn different things, but you also change along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm like approaching my last year. I'm like I'm a father. You know, I have a young daughter, and I think the pressing need of financial stability was like really, really heavy on me. And so my roommate, John Halliwell, who, among other things, loves to plan people's lives, you know. He's crazy. He's just a straight up Yankee, man.
Yeah.
We talk about, Rhode Island, sons and daughters of the American Revolution type white boy, you know what I mean? But just a beautiful, beautiful soul. He would talk to me about, future plans and my trajectory and this and that and this and that. And, he would begin with a series of questions. And the first question he would ask is, what is the most important thing for you professionally, transitioning into this next phase of your experience, whether you go graduate study or law school? And I looked him squarely in his eyes and I said, money. I want money. I've been here eating bean sandwiches and sweating in the desert. I lost my wife. I have a daughter to raise. I just want to get paid, man. I want money, man. And he looked at me and he said, "No, it's not true. It's not true." He said, "It's not true. Maybe you feel in some way that you have to say that, but it isn't true." And I was like, "What do you mean it's not true?" He said, "Ubaydullah." He actually, I think he came from a financially comfortable background. He said, "I know people who really want money, and they do what's necessary to get it." You know what I'm saying? He said, "If you really cared about money, there's no way you would be sitting in Cairo in this apartment with me." There's no way you would be sitting in Cairo in this apartment with me. There's no way you would have went through everything you had to go through to get to your last year at Azhar. And there's no trajectory conceivable in which this leads to money.
Yeah.
Because at that time I was, what I said I was gonna do? I said, I'm gonna go after this and either do law or econ. And I wanted to be the go-to guy. We had one teaching module for Qadaya Fiqhiyya al-Mu'asira, contemporary fiqh issues. In my second year, we did the Bursa. We did the stock market. And I was like, you know what? I want to be the Islamic finance man. That was my, I said, I'm going to make tons of money. I'm going to be the Sheikh Yusuf Talal de Lorenzo. You know what I'm saying? I want to be the Islamic finance man. That's what I said. I said, I want to get whatever kind of training necessary to be the man in terms of like global Islamic finance, right? And John said to me, "Nah, I don't believe that." He said, "Look, I hear you, but I think your being here, given everything you've sacrificed here, there's something that motivates you more than money. And whatever that thing is, that's what you need to pursue."
MashaAllah.
Right? And I had to like sit with that. And I'm like, you know what? You're absolutely right. When I first decided that I wanted to study Islam, people would tell me, I'll be honest with you, Hamza. There are not a lot of times in my life that I can say I've expressed like complete and peak sincerity. I don't think any person says that. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that I do recall fondly about who I was as a young man is that I would have people all the time tell me, family members, studying Islam, how are you gonna get a job? How are you gonna support a family? And I would look them without flinching squarely in the eyes and say, I don't care. I don't care anything about that. This is my religion. I just want to learn it. And at that time, wallahi, I knew nothing about chaplaincy, nothing about being an imam, nothing about being a resident scholar, nothing about being on the lecture circuit. I didn't even know any of that existed. And I loved learning about this religion so much, I just didn't care. Just didn't care. I didn't know that. In my last year at Azhar, oh yeah, and I want to make a clarification for the listeners. When I said I want money, I wasn't thinking I'm going to take the Islamic studies and kind of parlay them into something with money. Like I wasn't thinking like I'm going to go and give a khutbah and say, give me money. I was thinking, okay, this is a chapter of my life that I've learned, my deen or whatever. The next position I take is going to be a money position, meaning not like I guess what I'm saying is I don't want anyone to think I was thinking I'm going to do tijara with my deen. Like I'm going to, no. I want to go into tijara. he said, not like I would have, like the deen, I learned it. I don't have to teach anybody anything. Yeah. I want people to like understand what I'm saying. I wasn't thinking like, I'm going to be like, I'm going to do tijara with my deen. My thing is like, alhamdulillah, I went to Azhar, I learned, now let's get to some tijara. Let's get to some money. Yeah. I wanted to do something that was explicitly about money, not like, how can we use this Islamic teachings to build? No. Yeah. I want it to be in money. Like, what are we talking about here, guys? Find it, money. That's what I meant. Now, Imam Ghazali speaks candidly in the Ihya about people that make tijara with the deen. So it's a disgraceful thing, right? But that's not what I was talking. I was talking about making tijara with tijara. You see what I'm saying? I want money, and he said, no, man, you're motivated by more than that. You want something other than that. And I had to really think back to that time, and I wanted clarity concerning my newfound religion. And then I thought, I want to help people also attain that clarity. I want to that's really what I want to do. That's really what I want to do. And so when I returned, again, funny story, man. I'll be straight up honest with the listeners. I tried to get a job working downtown selling suits, man, selling menswear at a store on Oak Street. Mm-hmm. And I almost got the job too. I went to two interviews, an interview and a follow-up interview. And I was educating myself about the brand and educating myself about menswear. And I had no aspiration to work in religion, man. I actually just wanted to work a job. Yeah. And just teach at the masjid, on the weekends or teach Sunday school or something like that. This whole world was something completely unknown to me. Wallahi. It was actually, someone else that I believe has become controversial. All my friends have become controversial. All my friends have become controversial. But another just person that, in spite of whatever controversy surrounds their name, and again, if there were any people that were hurt by them, I pray that those people are given healing and justice. Amen. And if any wrong was done, I pray that Tawbah was made. Amen. But Usama Cannon, man, once asked me, what are you up to? Like, what are you doing? I told him about the suit thing. Like, I'm gonna be selling suits downtown. He looked at me like, I think it was kind of hard for him to wrap his mind around that. Like, selling suits? Yeah. Why did you go to Azhar? I said, just wanted to learn about deen. Inshallah, once I get my financial situation situated, I'll be able to volunteer teaching. But I'll just do that lillah. Once I get my money thing together, I'll just teach lillah. And he said, have you ever considered maybe making teaching deen your career? And I said, never. I've never considered that. I said, right now, I want to teach deen just because, I'd like to teach people, but the focus now is making money. The focus now is money. And so he, and then I asked him, I said, is there a way you can do that? This is, when I think about how green, is there a way he made a call to some friends of his from Houston, the Recite Institute in Houston. And he told them about me and my background and study and said that they should set up bi-weekly classes with me or monthly classes, right? No, in fact, alternating months. He was going to teach the Book of Assistance on one Saturday out of a month, and then the next month it would be me, and then him, and then me, and then him, and then me, and we would go like that. And he told them, he's a good guy, friend of mine, I trust him. This is what he should be paid. And he got off the phone and said, "You see how easy that was?" I was like, wow. I was like, wow. So that was my first exposure to like teaching professionally was with the Houston community, the Risala, Rayhan Farouk, and Salman, and just good people down there, man. And I was mostly a trembling student, just fumbling over his words. And they just embraced me and showed me love, man. And that gave me confidence to take on more, kind of freelance speaking opportunities. And then at that time, there was a brother named Muhammad Heraldez, who now is an entrepreneur and motivational speaker living in Paris. He was at that time the executive director of ALIM, the American Learning Institute for Muslims. And, he invited me to teach at the ALIM Summer Program.
MashaAllah.
And full circle. I taught at the ALIM Summer Program. And the teachers, Dr. Sherman Jackson and Dr. Munir Fareed, Ali Suleiman Ali, they appreciated the way that I presented. And they presented me with a contract to be the first resident scholar of ALIM. That was nearly 9 years ago.
Allah.
Yeah, that was nearly 9 years ago. And I'm still, that's what I'm still doing.
MashaAllah.
Alhamdulillah.
MashaAllah. It's beautiful, man. MashaAllah, you spent nearly a decade studying, and now you've been, MashaAllah, nearly over a decade now teaching.
Yeah, SubhanAllah. Yeah. Well, I graduated in 2012, so not quite a decade. Almost there. Almost getting there, inshallah. And, and still learning, man. That, Shaykh Amin Khalwadiya, Hafidhullah, a great resource, man. That, unfortunately, I don't think we appreciate as much as we should. I've had people tell me in strict confidence that in terms of usul al-fiqh, he might be one of the best scholars in the world.
MashaAllah.
Just right here in Lombard, man. Right here in Lombard. People don't know that, but he said that graduation is something that ruined Islamic scholarship.
Subhanallah.
That people would graduate and feel like, okay, I know something now. You know what I'm saying? No. And I actually, he said this, and I took it and ran with it. He said that even in English, a person would not say, I graduated. They would discuss their studies as, I read in this. I read in English literature. I read in biology. I read in this. Because the term read means I'm still reading.
Beautiful.
Right? I'm still reading. So, borrowing from, the beautiful expression of Shaykh Amin, I said, I read in Islamic law. People say, when did you graduate from Al-Azhar? I said, no, I read in Islamic law at Al-Azhar, and I'm still reading in Islamic law.
MashaAllah.
Alhamdulillah. I'm still reading.
Man, Shaykh, you're also currently, you have, mashallah, so many projects that you
Alhamdulillah, quite a few.
Yeah, mashallah, you're teaching at Miftaah, you're teaching at Tarim.
Teaching at IMAN. Mashallah. I love the Wahi family, man.
Mashallah, beautiful family, mashallah.
They are, they represent their tradition very, very well.
Mashallah.
And I think that, and they practice their tradition. They're not in any way watering it down, but it's beautiful when you see strict adherence to something mixed with just a lightheartedness and just a love.
MashaAllah.
I think that of all of the organizations out there that kind of assume that balance, I think Miftaah has that balance.
MashaAllah.
And I think it just comes from their personalities.
MashaAllah.
They're on their deen, right?
MashaAllah.
But they're just I think lighthearted, easygoing, individuals. So mashallah, Mufti Abdullah and Mufti Abdul Wahab and Mufti Abdul Rahman. Mashallah, their brother Abdul Rahim, I think he passed. Allah yarham. Yeah, I think he passed. SubhanAllah.
Man, Shaykh, I can't thank you enough. Jazakallah khairan. For accepting the invitation, for coming, for taking time out of your
No, Hamza, man, but let me just talk about you for a minute, man. My man Hamza Watersi.
Talk about, man.
No. There's plenty to talk about. A program like this is something that I think seeds a future Islamic renaissance, inshallah. one of the things that really hurt me, I'll be honest with you, man.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in Egypt, I learned, and I didn't know before I got there, that Islamic studies is something that the least accomplished, dimmest students in Egypt are encouraged to pursue. And I fear that this is true in many majority Muslim countries. That, people take some kind of, exam after high school. And the best and, most accomplished students go into medicine and then engineering and then so on and so forth. And the students that, are the least inspired are encouraged to pursue Islamic studies. And it's like, لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. You will never taste righteousness until you give freely of what you love. Mm-hmm. And if we as a global community are encouraging our best and brightest to only and exclusively study medicine, exclusively study engineering, exclusively study, secular law, what do we expect that to offer our community? Yeah. Right? It's the culture of academic underachievement that kind of hovered over Islamic studies in Egypt was really heartbreaking, man. It was really disheartening. And one of the things that I think we've done a very good job at in the United States is that we have, in some ways, interrupted that culture. We got to give ourselves some props. Like, we've interrupted that culture. Like, in America, and to maybe I think a lesser extent, the UK, somebody studying Islam is a source of pride for the family. The father might be a doctor, and he really esteems the fact that his son is a hafiz. He esteems the fact that, his son maybe wants to study Islam. And I think that shift of getting the best and the brightest, getting students that come from, families that push them, students that are driven back into the study of deen, this is what will lead to the revivification of the ulum of deen. So a program like this, in which, you're intentionally trying to inspire, young, bright people with, bright prospects to take up Islamic studies and to sit and to listen to stories about, the path of knowledge and to consider the path of knowledge. Don't underestimate your efforts. Don't think that this is a small thing. If, Islam is able to, plant deep roots in this country, and we're able to build the kind of Muslim community that reflects just the great privileges that we enjoy in this country, people will look at a program like this and say, this was a part of that process, a part of that process. So may Allah strengthen you and keep you strong and keep your intention, pure. MashaAllah, in hosting me, your edeb has been impeccable. Your skills as a journalist, that's a part of my background too, have also been, worthy of note. So, keep up the good work, man.
I appreciate it, man.
I really love what you're doing.
I appreciate the kind words, mashallah. Again, jazakallah khairan for coming on. May Allah reward you immensely for all the work that you're doing, and may Allah Ta'ala reward your wife, mashallah, for all the work that you're doing now. SubhanAllah, when I think about it and I reflect what you were sharing, inshallah, she'll be rewarded for everything that you do. Everything you do.
Ameen.
Allah Ta'ala bless you. Put barakah and afiyah in everything that you pick up.
Oh Lord, Ameen, oh Lord. Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair. It's been an honor. Really, it's been an honor, man. I almost feel like I need to pay you because I was sitting with my therapist. You know what I'm saying? I need a lot of stuff. I needed to, this is therapeutic for me. Which, I think sometimes modern society, there's too much confessional narcissism, you know, as I've heard it turned. Everybody loves to talk about themselves, and I guess I'm no different, but I hope that some benefit can come out of this, inshallah.
Inshallah. If anyone wants to get in touch with Shaykh Ubaydullah, you can see him rolling around with his 911.
So some things, you know, subhanallah, wala aisha wala akhirah. There's no life except the life of the akhirah. You know, man, I'll tell you though, man. Some things, man, you know, they say likulli nafsin shay'un tamilu ilay. Every nafs, every soul has some worldly thing that it inclines toward. You know, the Prophet ﷺ loved perfume. They say that in everything he was a man of moderation. He would go into the market and say, don't give me the best, don't give me the worst, just give me something decent. But with perfume, he would say, no, give me the best.
Yeah.
That's how I am with cars.
Mashallah.
You know, anything. My wife would tell you, food, accommodation when I'm traveling, I'm easy. It comes to cars, no, I like particular ones.
MashaAllah.
I like particular ones. Just like Allah. Khair.
Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.